Incident in Necrom by Jonkila Bothe. The situation simply is this, said Flaxith, his face as chiselled and resolute as any statue. Everyone knows that the cemetery west of the city is haunted by some malevolent beings, and has been for many years now. The people have come to accept it. They bury their dead by daylight, and away before Massa and Secunda have risen, and the evil comes forth. The only victims to fall prey to the devils within are the very stupid and the outsiders. It sounds like a natural solution to filtering out the undesirables then, laughed Nitra, a tall middle-aged woman with cold eyes and thin lips. Where is the gold in saving them? From the temple. They're reopening a new monastery near the cemetery, and they need the land cleansed of evil. They're offering a fortune, so I accepted the assignment with the caveat that I could assemble my own team to split the reward. That's why I've sought you each out. From what I've heard, you, Nitra, are the best bladesman in Morrowind. Nitra smiled her unpleasant best. And you, Osmic, are a renowned burglar, though never once imprisoned. The bald-pated young man stammered, as if to refute the charges, before grinning back. I'll get you in where you need to go, but then it is up to you to do what you need to do. I am no combatant. Anything Nitra and I can't handle, I'm sure Masitha will prove her mettle, Flaxith said, turning to the fourth member of the party. She comes on very good references as a sorceress of great power and skill. Masitha was the picture of innocence, round-faced and wide-eyed. Nitra and Osmic looked at her uncertainly, particularly watching her fearful expressions as Flaxith described the nature of the creatures haunting the cemetery. It was obvious she had never faced any adversary other than man and mare before. If she survived, they thought to themselves, it would be very surprising. As the foursome trudged towards the graveyard at dusk, they took the opportunity to quiz their new teammate. Vampires are filthy creatures, said Nitra. Disease-ridden, you know. They say off to the west they'll indiscriminately pass on their curse together with a number of other afflictions. They don't do that here so much, but still you don't want to leave their wounds untreated. I take it you know something of the spells of restoration if one of us get bit? I know a little, but I'm no healer, said Masitha meekly. More of a battle mage? Asked Osmic. I can do a little damage if I'm really close, but I'm not very good at that either. I'm more of an illusionist, technically. Nitra and Osmic looked at one another with naked concern as they reached the gates of the graveyard. There were moving shadows, stray spectres amongst the wrack and ruins, crumbled paths stacked on top of crumbled paths. It wasn't a maze of a place. It could have been any dilapidated graveyard, but even without looking at the tombstones, it did have one very noticeable feature. Filling the horizon was the mausoleum of a minor Cyrodiilic official from the Second Era, slightly exotic, but still harmonizing with the Dumna graves in a complementary style called Decay. It's a surprisingly useful school, whispered Masitha defensively. You see, it's all concerned with the Magicka's ability to alter the perception of objects without changing their physical compositions. Removing sensual data, for example, to cast darkness, or remove sound or smell from the air. It can help by... A red-haired vampire woman leapt out of the shadows in front of them, knocking Flaxith on his back. Nitra quickly unsheathed her sword, but Masitha was faster. With a wave of her hand, the creature stopped, frozen, her jaws scant inches from Flaxith's throat. Flaxith pulled out his own blade and finished it off. That's illusion? Asked Osmic. Certainly, smiled Masitha. Nothing changed in the vampire's form except its ability to move. Like I said, it's a very useful school. The four climbed up over the paths to the front gateway to the crypt. Osmic snapped the lock and disassembled the poison trap. The sorceress cast a wave of light down the dust-choked corridors, banishing the shadows and drawing the inhabitants out. Almost immediately they were set on by a pair of vampires, howling and screaming in a frenzy of bloodlust. The battle was joined, so no sooner were the first two vampires felled than their reinforcements attacked. They were mighty warriors of uncanny strength and endurance, but Masitha's paralysis spell and the weaponry of Flaxith and Nitra clove through their ranks. Even Osmic aided the battle. They're crazy, gasped Masitha, when the fight nearly ended and she could catch her breath. Aquara, the most savage of the vampire bloodlines, said Flaxith. We have to find and exterminate each and every one. Delving into the crypts, the group hounded out more of the creatures. Though they varied in appearance, each seemed to rely on their strength and claws for attacking, and subtlety did not seem to be the style of any. When the entire mausoleum had been searched and every creature within destroyed, the four finally made their way to the surface. It was only an hour until sunrise. There was no frenzied scream or howl. Nothing rushed forward towards them. The final attack, when it happened, was so unlike the others that the questers were taken utterly by surprise. The ancient creature waited until the four were almost out of the cemetery, talking amiably, making plans for spending their share of the reward. He judged carefully who would be the greatest threat, and then launched himself at the sorceress. Had Flaxith not turned his attention back from the gate, she would have been ripped to shreds before she had chanced to scream. The vampire knocked Mesitha across a stone, its claws raking across her back, but stopped its assault in order to block a blow from Flaxith's sword. It accomplished this maneuver in its own brutal way, by tearing the warrior's arm from its socket. Osmic and Nitra set upon it, but they found themselves in a losing battle. Only when Mesitha had pulled herself back up from behind the pile of rocks, weak and bleeding, did the fight turn. She cast a magical ball of flame at the creature, which so enraged it that it turned back to her. Nitra saw her opening and took it, beheading the vampire with a stroke of a sword. So you do know some spells of destruction, like you said Nitra. And a few spells of healing too, she said weakly. But I can't say Flaxith. The warrior died in the bloody dust before them. The three were very quiet as they travelled across the dawn-lit countryside, back towards Necrom. Mesitha felt the throb of pain on her back intensify as they walked, and then a gradual numbness like ice spread through her body. I need to go to a healer and see if I'm diseased, she said as they reached the city. Meet us at the Moth and Fire tomorrow morning, said Nitra. We'll go to the temple and get our reward and split it there. 3 hours later, Osmic and Nitra sat in their room at the tavern, happily counting and recounting the gold marks. Split 3 ways, it was a very comfortable sum. What if the healers can't do anything for Mesitha? Smiled Osmic dreamily. Some diseases can be insidious. Did you hear something in the hall? Asked Nitra quickly. But when she looked, there was no one there. She returned, shutting the door behind her. I'm sure Mesitha will survive if she went straight to the healer, but we could leave tonight with the gold. Let's have one last drink to our poor sorcerers, said Osmic, leading Nitra out of the room towards the stairs down. Nitra laughed. Those spells of illusion won't help her track us down, as useful as she keeps saying they are. Paralysis, light, silence, not so good when you don't know where to look. They closed the door behind them. Invisibility is another spell of illusion, said Mesitha's disembodied voice. The gold on the table rose into the air and vanished from sight as she slipped it into her purse. The door again opened and closed, and all was silent, until Osmic and Nitra returned a few minutes later.